get somewhere and do something. Good evening. How is everybody doing? Praise God. Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. I'm so delighted to be here. Looking forward to a good weekend. And I've been praying all along this time since Pastor Ken Davids contacted me and asked me to be here, that I could be a blessing to all of you. And that whatever we share, whatever we discuss, could also not only be understood, but could also be a blessing to all of you. That's my goal. And so, by all means, this is going to be a seminar. And any questions that you might have, I will always have an answer. So, hey, feel free to ask. I may say I know, I may say maybe, I may say I don't know. But I'll have an answer for you, all right? And if I don't, maybe I'll owe it to you, okay? But hopefully we'll get to have a good time, make Revelation a little bit more clear to all of us, especially when we're going to be looking at the central unit, the heart of Revelation. I'd like to also bring you, and I'll repeat that myself tomorrow, greetings from our university down in the Dallas area. Been delighted to be teaching there for some years already. And so the Lord's been giving me the opportunity to enjoy, as I was mentioning to Tom, the best of two worlds. During the week, Monday through Friday, I get to teach. So I love teaching. And then on weekends, I get to preach. And I love preaching. So the best of two worlds. And I'm enjoying. And so I pray that we can all be blessed this weekend. How many of you have read the book of Revelation? All of you? Praise the Lord. Praise the Lord. So I'm not going to be talking foreign language. How many of you have remained cleared after reading the book of Revelation? May I ask that question? Or may I phrase it in a different way? How many of you have been left confused after reading Revelation? I got some hands. That's okay. That's okay. I mean, that's always possible. I'm still wrestling with some of the things in Revelation and some other portions of the Bible. So, hey, I don't claim to know it all. So maybe you're going to be helping me out understand something tonight and tomorrow. So we'll be learning together. When it comes to the book of Revelation, may I begin saying that one of the easiest way to understand Revelation is by looking first at the bigger picture and then from there moving into the smaller picture. So it's like whenever you're going to get around building a home, before you do any digging and any foundations and anything, what do? Okay, you have a piece of land. You need to determine where you're going to, put your building on, and then who you're going to be contacting. An architect, right? And the architect is going to draw you few pieces of paper, right? What will be the first sheet? The first one will give you the bigger picture, right? What do you think? It'll let you know what is it going to look like, landscape, and everything. And then begins by showing you where the rooms are going to be located at. Living room, bedroom, kitchen, so on and so forth. You got a bigger picture. Once you get that bigger picture, where the rooms are going to be located at, what will be next? Then he's going to be talking about Hopefully he has already arranged that. He's going to talk about measurements. Yeah, hopefully that's been already done. So now, next thing, he's going to be talking to you either about where the plumbing is going to be going, right? And then electrical, all nice fans and then our switches and outlets and things like that. And then he's going to be adding on from the bigger into the smaller. We're going to do something similar with the book of Revelation. We're going to be looking at the bigger picture first. Okay? We're going to get a general message from John. And after we get that general message, we're going to go into the heart and we're going to begin looking into smaller details to help us get the bigger message more clear and more complete for every one of us. So what I'm attempting to do this weekend, today and tomorrow, I'd like to walk you through with me into Revelations chapter 12 and chapter 13. Tonight, we're going to be looking into 12. Tomorrow afternoon, we're going to be moving into 13. So what do we do in the morning? We just have a little bit of coffee and a donut, and that's it? No, we'll make a little connection from chapter 14. So that chapter 14, that little connection, will help us now bring 12 and 13 together. Okay? So that is my plan. Are you excited about it? Looking forward to? Let's begin. Let's look at the bigger picture. When you look at the book of Revelation, you need to understand that this book is based on 7 visions. So when John is writing his book, John is writing his book in 7 distinct units, indivisible units that need to be understood. So let me draw it over here. First unit begins in chapters 1 all the way to chapter 3. In that first unit, when you read those 3 chapters, you are going to find 7 messages. And those 7 messages are directed to whom? 7 churches. Correct. So the first vision is a vision of the 7 churches. A revelation. Second vision. Now we move from chapter 4, verse 1, all the way to chapter 8, verse 1. And now that second unit, that second vision, has another set of 7s. No longer 7 churches, but now they are 7 seals. Yes. 7 seals. They're broken. And then something pops up and moves in. Next vision. Next unit. Beginning in chapter 8, verse 2. Moving all the way to chapter 11. And I believe it's verse 18, the last. You double check me on that. I think it's 18. And that next unit has another set of 7s. And this time are the 7 trumpets. So let me just, nothing related to President Trump. It's just an abbreviation, okay? 7 trumpets. Then we come to the fourth vision. what I call the heart of Revelation, the central unit. And that comprises chapters 12 all the way to 14. And this one does not have a set of sevens. No, doesn't have really, numbers like that. It does include some dates, but nothing like a 7 something or a 5 something. But it describes some events that are leading from the time of Jesus' birth, moving down in history all the way to the second coming of Jesus. And so, for the sake of giving it a name, I have called it the End Time Events Unit. End Time Events. And that is your central unit in Revelation. Couple of things that you want to know about that central unit, about that first half of the book, before I move into the second half. When you read chapters 1 all the way to 14 in Revelation, you're going to come across a couple of characteristics. One, that section is mainly historical. Let me write it over here. What do I mean by historical? What I mean is that each one of those units describe events that take place at the beginning of the Christian history, move down into the middle, and project us to the end. In different ways, using different symbols, but they take us through Christian history. This is why I call it a historical section. Within that historical section, we're going to see another element that stands out. Each one of those visions is introduced by a vision of the sanctuary. That is to say, whenever John is ready to receive the new vision, God would always give him something related to the sanctuary. And as John is looking at the sanctuary and at the vision, he sees furniture. He sees the 7-branch candlestick. Jesus is walking in the midst of it. He sees some water, which is a reminder of the basin that was in the sanctuary. He sees a lamb that is slain, reminding us of Jesus and which altar? Which furniture? The altar of sacrifice. Yes. He also sees the altar of incense, and even the Ark of Covenant. All of it, or all of them, are presented in this section. And that is significant, and I'll tell you in a moment why. Another characteristic that you will see here, that is that whenever God presents in vision to John elements of destruction is always partial. So let me write that down over here. Partial destruction. So, 1/3 was affected, 1/4 was affected. There's always a partial element that is affected. Destruction is not total. It's not complete. Is this okay so far? Are you still with me? Good. Good. So now, why are these characteristics significant? For one, why is the sanctuary so central for every vision in the book of Revelation? Why the sanctuary? So when we look at the rest of the scriptures, especially the book of Hebrews, we are told that when Jesus resurrected and Jesus ascended up to heaven, where did he go? He went as our high priest into the heavenly sanctuary to be what? To be our mediator and to work on our behalf before the Father and in the world. So now, that automatically tells us that if the sanctuary is central in the book of Revelation, then that means that God is interested in your salvation. God is interested in my salvation. And the fact that there are furniture visible indicates that a ministry is going on in heaven. And if that ministry is still active, then we know what's available. If there is ministry going on, and if there is mediation going on, what's available? Yes. Said in a different way, there is grace still available. And if there is grace available, you still have an opportunity. So now, based on that alone, now John is telling me whatever decision I plan to do in my life, or I plan to take in my life, or make in my life, whatever I want to do, whatever walk of life I'm going through, I must consider my salvation because grace is still available. And I need to take advantage of that. Why? We're going to see that this grace will not be available indefinitely. It'll come to a point when grace will stop. And Revelation makes it clear. Revelation makes it clear. Why is grace stopping? Why is it ceasing? Because there is an event called judgment that takes place in heaven that will then determine our destiny and then prepared for the coming of the Lord. Now, granted, I know this concept could be in conflict with the beliefs of many Christians out there. Because many believe that grace will be available always. And many believe that this judgment will not take place until the coming of the Lord. So this concept could be in conflict with the beliefs of many people. So far, Revelation is showing me a different picture. And this is why Revelation tells me that some furniture is visible. And it's also telling me that whatever destruction happens, it's only partial. Because as long as Jesus is up in the heavenly sanctuary ministering, there is hope. Are you understanding? Once he steps out of that world, that's it. That's it. Now, let's look at the second half of the book. What will be the next vision? The fifth one. Now we come back to our last set of sevens, which goes from chapters 15 all the way to 19. Which set is that one? The seventh, final, or last plagues. Yes. So now, let me ask you this question. Remember, we're looking at the bigger picture. Revelation has Revelation has 4 sets of sevens. 1, 7 churches. 2, 7 seals. 3, 7 trumpets. 4, 7 plagues. 4 sets of sevens. And when you look at the bigger picture, you're going to see that those 4 visions, or those 4 sets of sevens, are broken by this central unit. Why are they broken? Why couldn't God have given the 4 together to John? Let me tell you why. While the first 3 sets of sevens talk about Christian history, from the time of Jesus to the time of his coming, and present to us grace and salvation still being available, the 7 plagues do not describe Christian history. The 7 plagues only describe the time prior to the coming of Jesus. The final history. They occur after judgment has taken place, grace has been closed, and the Lord will be getting ready to return. So why are they divided? They are divided now because we need to understand why is it that the Lord will be sending 7 plagues. Some people may still not have it clear, and may be still wondering why. And so the Lord is merciful enough, He's gracious enough to give us an answer. So why the division? Why the separation? To let us know that all this time the Lord was doing ministry for all of us. All this time the Lord was still making salvation available. Some chose to listen and accept. Others chose not to listen and did not accept. Then come the plagues. But why do they come? Because now the Lord conducts an activity that not many people like to hear about, and that the Lord calls judgment. And when we talk about the word, or we use the word judgment, some people go nuts. They don't like the word, because there is a negativity attached to it in the minds of modern people. Because we normally associate biblical judgment with earthly judgment. Who likes to go to a court and stand before the justice of peace? Anybody? We all like to stay away from it, right? Be good boys and good girls, so we don't have to face it. Right? Because normally, when we go to court, it's about paying a fine, it's about some type of jail time, community service, some sort of a punishment. And so judgment is normally associated with that type of idea. But when it comes to judgment in the scriptures, it's not about punishment. It's about vindicating the righteous before the universe. And to me, that's a whole new and different perspective. This is why you will be able to read in the book of Psalms how David cries out to God, "Oh Lord, please judge me." And he asked God like 2 or 3 times, "Please judge me." I mean, who wants to be judged? And he's crying out to be judged. And then he says, "And I know you're going to find me righteous." Now listen to David. Can you consider David a righteous man? What do you think? When you look at some of the actions that he did, would you consider him a righteous man? You know, some people may have some questions about it. And yet, David is crying out to be judged, and then he's concluding, "And I know you're going to find me righteous." Why? Because despite of his actions, David's heart was sincere enough to repent, to confess, and to place his life in the hands of the Lord. And he knows that the Lord will forgive, because his grace is big enough. That's what judgment is all about. Justifying, vindicating his people. So it's not negative. It's a blessing. However, there is only one group who may not like to really face this judgment. Who are those? Only a group of those who decided to be smart enough not to listen and not to follow God's principles. So there will be a separation. God doesn't want anybody to be lost. If anybody's lost, it's a personal choice. It's not God's choice. Because God is making everything possible available for anybody. But in the end, why 7 plagues? Why? Not only because there will be a judgment taking place and a separation of righteous and unrighteous, but because in the end time, we're going to see that the unrighteous will attack the righteous. And God is a righteous God, and He will defend His people. And part of His defense will be the 7 plagues. Is this making sense? Bigger picture so far. Remember, ever since Genesis chapter 3 occurred, we've been living in the middle of a great controversy. A controversy between good and evil. And in this controversy, we're going to find that even though we see a Jesus engage with Satan, that controversy is not about who is more powerful. We know who's more powerful. I have no question in my mind about that. So it's not about power. It's not about territory. We know to whom this earth belongs to. I have no question about it in my mind. So what is this controversy all about? Okay? What is it that Jesus wants from us? He wants our worship, yes. What else? Our love, what else? Obedience, yes. Yes, righteous. Our loyalty, right? And you can continue adding into the list. He wants all of it from us. Now the question is, does He deserve it? Of course. By creation and by redemption. He deserves all of it. Are we willing to give it to Him? Of course. I do. But guess what? Is Jesus the only one wanting from us our worship, loyalty, obedience, and everything else that you want to add to the list? Who else wants that from us? Exactly. The devil also wants our worship. He wants our loyalty, our obedience. So, at the center of this great controversy, you will find whom? Not the U.S., please. The entire world, okay? All of us. Because now we all have to decide. Who are we going to worship? Who are we going to obey? Who are we going to serve? And love and everything else. And depending on our choice, then that's going to be our direction in our lives. And the sad thing about it is that throughout history, until the present time, you have seen individuals claiming to love God, claiming to follow God, and yet they're serving the devil's interests. Is that difficult to see? No. I mean, I can give you some examples if you like. I mean, let's make it biblical so we don't get too personal. Okay? Let me ask you. Look at Paul's life before conversion. Do you think Paul was an atheist? Do you think he was somebody who didn't care about God or anything like that? No. Paul was a born Jew, and when he describes his own history, he says that according to the law, he was blameless, okay? A man who was willing to kill for God. And when he was persecuting the church, he thought he was fighting the battles of the Lord. And there was not an individual who can convict Paul of being wrong. No one. He thought he was righteous in whatever he was doing. But then let me ask you, was he really serving God? Or who he was serving? It was not until his encounter with the Lord on the road of Damascus that now he finally realizes, oops, major boo-boo. He's been fighting against God when he thought he was fighting for God. And now, the second part of Paul is now the converted Paul. And when you read 1 Corinthians 15, Paul was never able to forget what he did. And this is why in chapter 15, Paul says, I am who I am because of the grace of God. And his grace was not in vain in me. So now, what is grace for Paul? When you read Paul's writings, grace is not about not going to church on Sabbath. Grace is not about not observing the law and nailing it on the cross. That's not what grace is all about. In Paul's mind, grace is about him having fallen so deep into the bottomless pit, so deep, killing, persecuting, desolating the church, that he didn't even deserve anything. And the Lord pulled him out from down there. He brought him out. And not only he brought him up, but the Lord now set him as an apostle. Did he deserve it? That's grace. And if God did it to Paul, he can do it to anybody. I know he did it to me. Because if I tell you my earlier life, in my youth days in New York City, you may be wondering, what am I doing here preaching? I shouldn't be preaching. You know, gang activity and all that stuff. I shouldn't be here. But I felt that somehow God had mercy on me. He pulled me out, and not only he pulled me out, but now he allowed me to be a pastor and a Bible teacher. And it's not about me or anything that I deserve. It's all about his grace. And that does not prevent me from coming to church on Sabbath and from following his commandments. Are you following? So this is what this great controversy is now being played on. And because of that controversy, is that we see this picture in Revelation. Any questions? Are we okay? Are you people? Are you following me? You with me? Good. Good deal. All right. So now let me finish up the last two. Next vision. From the 7 plagues, what's the next one? We got chapter 20. And in chapter 20, what do we have? Yes. We got the millennium. We got the millennium. The righteous are in heaven. The wicked are dead on earth. And the devil is all alone in a desolated world, contemplating his own work. Last vision. Chapters 21 and 22. What do we have in that vision? We got the new earth and we got the new Jerusalem. Please don't confuse that with New England or New Jersey, okay? I grew up in New Jersey, but no, that's not my home. I'm still waiting. I'm sorry? In New England. Can you imagine that? You're a New Englander. All right. Our true home is still coming. That's what I'm looking forward to. That is the picture of Revelation. Now, just as we see some characteristics in the first half, there are some characteristics in the second half. First one. While this first half is historical, the second half is all in time. Takes place at the end, especially after grace has closed, probation is done. Secondly, you still have visions of the sanctuary here, but there is no furniture. No furnishings are mentioned or are shown. Over here, we see the different pieces of the sanctuary. Over here, none. Third characteristic. And this first half, we noted that destruction was partial. Only 1/3, 1/4, whatever, partial. Over here, destruction, total, complete. What is that telling us? It tells us that in this second half, no grace is available. No grace is available. That's right. So when I see that picture, I ask myself, how is my relationship with the Lord? How is my walk with Him? Have I made the right decisions in my life? I don't know where's your walk with the Lord right now. Only you know. That's between you and your God. But if you haven't made yet your decision to surrender your life to the Lord, to be baptized, to be committed to Him, I suggest that you look at the picture of Revelation one more time, so that we can see, while there is ministry in heaven, there will be grace available. Once that ministry is over, no more grace will be available. And whatever decision we make in life, we have to make it before this happens. When is the right time to make the decision? Don't wait until next week, next year, or next decade. Hopefully not next century. Don't wait. We don't know. So it's better off doing it right now. That would be my best counsel. Do it right now, so that we can take advantage of God's grace still being available. Let me pause for a moment. Any questions? Are we okay? Is this clear? Or it's just as clear as mud? Church, are we good? Perfect. All right. I only have a few more minutes before 8. Now I need to stand at the shadow of your mercy to let me know if you'd like me to continue a little more, since we haven't yet started with the central unit, or you might be already tired and like to retire. What is your wish? Go a little more? Okay, great. Do we say about another 20 minutes or so? Yeah? Don't look at the clock. Remember, I can go until midnight if I... Okay. No. You need to go to rest. Okay, so let me invite you to the screen. Let's now look at the central unit a little bit more closer. So, few details as a way of repeating. The central unit is the fourth one, as you see it here in the picture. So the first half involves historical events. We already talked about that. The second half involves future historical events, which is the end time. Okay? So we got already that clear. That central unit also breaks the 4 sets of sevens into 2 parts. The first 3 talks about partial destruction, shows sanctuary furnishings, which automatically tells us grace is available. The second part contains now the last 7 plagues and describes a language of complete destruction. No furniture is available, therefore grace is gone. So we already talked about that. That's why I went a little fast. That was a little cruise, a little too fast. Okay, now this is where I wanted it to take you. Let's look at that central unit of Revelation. In order to understand it, once again, let's get a little bigger picture. and then we'll go into some details about it. 3 chapters make up that central unit. Chapters 12, 13, and 14. When you're looking at content, seems like chapter 12 is the one that has the most. Because chapter 12 covers a great deal of history from the time of Jesus' birth all the way to the time prior to his second coming. So chapter 12 presents 5 major events that take place in the Christian era from the time of Jesus to the time of prior to his second coming. 5 events that are part of this great controversy. Let's consider them individually, one at a time. The first event that you see there, verses 1 through 5, talk to us about the birth of Jesus. So it talks about the event that took place in Bethlehem. In that event, we all remember the story, reading it from the Gospels. Up to that moment, the devil had made all kinds of efforts to prevent Jesus from coming into the world. You need to read the Old Testament in order to get that picture. If you determine that the Old Testament is no longer good, you're making a serious mistake. You will not be able to understand the New Testament without the Old. It's crucial. What is it that the devil did in the Old Testament times to stop the Messiah from coming? Because ever since God said, I will put enmity between you and the woman, between your seed and her seed, he will crush your head and you will strike his heel. Ever since God said that, in Genesis 3:15, the devil knew that he wasn't going to have it easy with us. Actually, not with us, with him. With us, he had it made. I mean, we're sinners. Why he wasn't going to have it easy? Why is that? I'll explain it to you quickly here. Allow me to use, can I erase the, okay. Let me erase this quickly here. Not everything is in PowerPoint. Sometimes we need to go to the board and use some power board and power marker. So we'll try. And it seems like one is kind of falling down or moving. Okay. You have Genesis 3:15. What do we have in Genesis 3:15? We got 2 elements. This is provided after the fall of man. Adam and Eve had already sinned. God had already spoken with both. And in Genesis 3:15, he is now talking to the serpent. He's not talking to Adam in 3:15. He's not talking to Eve in 3:15. He's talking to a serpent. So whatever he's saying there is not a promise to man. It is a sentence to the serpent. However, that sentence becomes a promise to us. That's the beauty of the message. So what is it that we see? Number one, God told the serpent, there will be enmity between you and the woman. What did that mean? Two things. It meant that there will be a conflict. Life on earth will now be marked by a conflict. That is to say, man's life was not going to be easy. But secondly, it also meant that the devil's activity was not going to be easy either. God determined that if the devil made man fall into sin, the devil was not going to have absolute control on planet Earth. And each time the devil will seem to be having control, God will come through and he will break it. This is why we see some major events taking place in Old Testament history. One of those major events, easy one, we heard about it. Yeah, way before him. Way before. Which one? The flood. Major event. Why the flood? Why do we have a flood? Just because man was bad enough? No. When you read Genesis 6, you're going to find that the inclination of the thoughts of man were continually for what? For evil. There was bloodshed in the world. There was violence. Let me ask you, who was having control? The devil. And even God regretted having created man. He himself said it in Genesis 6. But then, if God would have allowed things to continue its normal course, what would happen? All humanity will become bad, and as a result, they will destroy the whole thing. And then, what about the Messiah? There will be no Messiah to come. And so now, God thinking about the future and God thinking about restoration of us, he decided to break through and decided to stop it by bringing a flood. The flood is not about a God who is a butcher. The flood is about a God who is gracious and merciful enough to stop the devil's control so that the Messiah will be able to come. Are you following? That's enmity. That's enmity. So there will be a conflict, and the devil will not have total control. God will intervene immediately. The second part of Genesis 3:15. Now we have a male seed. That is the Messiah who will come. And this Messiah will crush the serpent's head. But in the process of crushing the serpent's head, the serpent will strike back and then will hit the seed on the heel, which would imply that the coming of this male seed, this Messiah, will include a sacrifice. He'll die to make possible your restoration and my restoration. So ever since that was given, the devil knew he was not going to have it easy. So he decided, through all means possible, to somehow prevent the Messiah from coming. This is why he used corruption within Israel. He used other nations to attack and destroy. He used any means possible to prevent the Messiah from coming. But when he was not able to, now we see the Messiah born in Bethlehem. And when he's born in Bethlehem, what was his attempt? Get the Romans to take care of business, right? But praise God, strike one. He couldn't get it. He couldn't get it. Then we have the second event that is mentioned. The cross. You read Revelation 12, verse 11. Where I think it's God, there is a voice from heaven that says, those who have overcome the devil have done it through the blood of the Lamb. And when was that blood poured out? On the cross. Exactly. So we got the second major event, the cross. Then, and by the way, with that second event, who won? Did the devil or did Jesus? Jesus won. The devil thought he had him, but he lost. Strike two. Is he done? No. If we follow, do you follow baseball? Anybody here a Yankee fan? Excuse me for the New England. I know the rivalry right there, so let me not get any further than that. You know that in baseball, a batter has 3 chances, right? And we call those strikes. The first one still has a chance. Second one, still dancing around. Until he gets the third one. Did the devil get a third one? Now we got the third event. Jesus' ascension to heaven. And with Jesus' ascension to heaven, the devil is what? Is thrown out. Him and his angels. So he lost. Strike 3. And then you're out. When you look at Revelation 12, now you can see that the first 2 events, Bethlehem and the cross, took place on earth. The third event took place in heaven. And all 3 engage Jesus and Satan. And in all 3 occasions, Jesus came out victor. Praise God. Praise God. So Satan is a defeated foe. Through Jesus, we can also defeat him. We have nothing to fear if we are on the side of the Lord. So now, we come to the next 2 events. 1260 years, The devil is out of heaven. He knows he cannot engage the Lord anymore. He's lost. So now, who does he go against? Now he tries to take it up to or with his people. He's bending his wrath on his church. And so he persecutes the church for 1260 years. Middle Ages. Persecution of the church. And that's taking place on earth. And just when he thought he had the church and he could destroy the church, what happened? One more time, the Lord intervened and the church is preserved. So now he lost it again. I'm sorry? Yeah, but there's one thing about him. He doesn't give up. I mean, if you want to talk about a good quality about that man or that being, he doesn't give up. As Christians, we also need to learn not to give up in our faith. We need to continue. That's the only thing that we have. Nothing else. So now, knowing that everything is at stake and that he has but only one more chance, Revelation 12:17 presents to us the last showdown. And then we got the final encounter, final persecution. One more time, the devil trying to destroy God's people. He knows he has no more chance with the Lord, so he wants to take it on us. Will he win? Revelation 12 doesn't tell us that. Doesn't tell us that, unfortunately. But Revelation 13 gives us a better clue. And definitely chapter 14 will tell us, yes, there will be victory. But now, here's one thing that I must tell you about Revelation 12, that in time showdown. The previous four are history. May I help you focus in what's coming up from Revelation 12's perspective. Can I get your attention away from the screen, back into the board? What do we have in Revelation 12, verse 17? Yes? Good question. Good question. I'm going to place you on hold a little bit until tomorrow. Would you be here tomorrow? Praise the Lord. Remember, don't give up. I will give you a partial answer tonight, but a more complete answer tomorrow. Okay? Revelation 12:17 talks to us about the final conflict. You all have your Bibles opened? Okay, perfect. What is the conflict involving? So Revelation 12 tells to us about the dragon who is infuriated against whom? He's infuriated, he's very mad against the woman. Now, read carefully, okay? Read carefully. Because he's very mad at the woman. because he had persecuted a woman before, he couldn't get rid of her. So he's upset about it. But the interesting thing is that in Revelation 12:17, even though the dragon is upset at the woman, the dragon does not wage war against the woman. Who does he goes to? He goes to, and let me use a more literal translation. He's going against the seed of the woman. In some more modern translations, you'll read the term offspring, descendants, etc. More literal translation will read seed. And I'll tell you in a moment why. So now the question is, why is the devil not engaging the woman anymore, even though he still hates her? Why is he now going full speed against the seed of the woman? What's the problem? Before, when you look at the 1260 years, the devil was totally against the woman. And he was trying to destroy the woman. He made all kinds of efforts to destroy the woman. He just couldn't, but that was his intention. But now, in Revelation 12:17, at the very end of time, instead of engaging the woman one more time, he goes against the seed of the woman. And what is the description of the seed of the woman? They keep the law of God, and they have the testimony of Jesus. So the question is, why does he not attack the woman? Why does he concentrate all his weaponry, artillery, everything that he has against the seed? Apparently there is a problem with the woman. Because who are the ones who have the commandments of God and the testimony of Jesus? The woman? No, the seed. So apparently the woman does not represent a threat to the dragon anymore. Only the seed. Whatever happened to the woman then? Because apparently before, early in Revelation 12, the woman is described as beautiful, dressed with the sun, the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars. Beautiful. And the woman, in biblical terms, represents what? Represents the church. So, whatever happened to the woman? Whatever happened to that church? That is no longer being persecuted, even though it is hated. Something changed. When is the next time that we see a woman in Revelation? Revelation 17. But this time is not called a pure woman or beautiful woman. This time is called a harlot. So whatever happened to a woman? Somehow, between 12:16 and 12:17, between the period of the 1260 years and the time of the end, something happened to a woman that caused her to change. And now we see the woman corrupted in Revelation 17. Can we see that today? This might be something new for some of you. Maybe something a little harsh, maybe. But that's what Revelation is saying. I'm not making it up. I'm only presenting what Revelation is saying. So that helps us see then a couple of things at least. One, It's not enough to say, I am a believer. Because the woman is also a believer. And yet, not persecuted. It's not enough to say, I love God and I follow God, because the woman also claims the same. And Jesus says, not all who says, Lord, Lord, will enter into the kingdom of heaven. It's not enough to say, I go to church, or just go to any church, because the woman represents a church. And yet, it's not persecuted. What is it that really matters before the Lord? Then, following the commandments of God and having the testimony of Jesus. Why is that significant? Why? That is significant because when you go back to the Old Testament, those were the same two characteristics that distinguished God's people in Old Testament times. Can you read that in the Old Testament? Yes. Where? You can read it in Isaiah chapter 8, verse 20. To the law and to the testimony. If you don't speak accordingly, then you have no light. So God's people were distinguished by having the law and the testimony. God doesn't change. He's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. God's people will be distinguished in the New Testament by having the same two. And unfortunately, the woman doesn't have it. That also tells us then that Christianity, in the time of the end, Christianity, prior to the coming of the Lord, will be divided in two. Those who follow God's law and testimony, and those who don't. And then we need to make a choice. Where do we want to be at? Do we want to be at any place? Or do we want to be where God's characteristics are being demonstrated? This is Revelation. And it's a crucial message. Because nowadays, many people claim it doesn't matter what you believe. As long as you believe in God or believe in something, that's all that matters. Many people claim today, it doesn't matter where you go. As long as you go to any church, that's all that matters. And Revelation is saying, it does matter. And we need to make a decision. Any questions, church? Is this clear? I mean, it's amazing. It's amazing. And I know at first, this may be hitting a little too harsh. But if God's word is saying it, I need to pay a little attention to it. At least make the effort to look into it and ask God for light and guidance. Because if I am honest enough with myself, and I want to be, because I want to be saved, and I want my family to be saved, I need to pay attention to God's word. That's the only reality that we need to go by. And that's what Revelation is presenting to us. Okay. Any questions, church? Any questions? Please. What that means? Good question. Good question. Fortunately, Revelation helps us. In Revelation chapter 18, I think it is, or is it chapter 19? John tells us that the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. Is it 19:10? Thank you. It is the spirit of prophecy. John saw this angel. He fell by his feet to worship, and the angel says, "Don't do that. I'm a fellow servant. Do not worship me, worship God." And then he says, "But the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy." What is the spirit of prophecy then? Would be the question. When you look at the term spirit of prophecy that is being announced or mentioned by the angel in Revelation 19:10, then we must look before Revelation time. What was the spirit of prophecy as indicated by the angel? And when we look at the Old Testament, the spirit of prophecy embraces all of these prophets, all of those biblical characters that God inspired, that God utilized to bring about a message to his people. So the spirit of prophecy is the work that each one of those prophets in Old Testament times did for God. When we move now from Revelation forward into the future, what is the spirit of prophecy then? Now, Old Testament prophets were not the only ones inspired. Now we have New Testament writers, also inspired. We got Paul, we got Peter, we got John, so on and so forth, who were inspired by the Spirit of the Lord to provide a message for his people. Did the spirit of prophecy end right there? No. Because now we clearly read in the scriptures that in the days prior to the coming of the Lord, the Spirit of the Lord will be again poured out. And now there will be prophesying again. Visions will be received, dreams will be seen, and we believed that that has taken place in the life and ministry of Ellen White. So when we look at the spirit of prophecy, the spirit of prophecy is not only the ministry of Ellen White. The spirit of prophecy embraces all of those revelations that God gave to the men and women of old throughout the different ages. And then, in these last days, he did it through the ministry of Ellen White. Will she be the last one to receive it? We don't know. We don't know. That is up to God. But one thing I know, that if I'm going to pay attention to a testimony of Jesus, I must not only pay attention to Ellen White, I also have to pay attention to the New Testament, and I also have to pay attention to the Old Testament. That is the entire revelation of God, the entire Word of God. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Perfect. Who is the true God?
How do you identify the true God? I mean, I understand,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the difference. Who goes to any church, who are they worshiping? Are they worshiping the true God? How is that revealed through the testimony? In the Old Testament, it brings that up several times, that they worship the true God.
Mm-hmm.
The true God was the God of Israel. Naaman figured that out.
Mm-hmm. And I believe that the apostles also figured it out. And that's what they transmitted to us. And so this is why I believe Jesus is the true God. John himself says it in his first letter, chapter 5, that he is the true God. Um, and then with Jesus, we also have the Father. And with them too, we also have the Holy Spirit. And so when we are listening to their instructions and following, then we know we are following the true God. And that's what I'm guided by. This is where the true God spoke to me. So this is what I must follow. Yeah. Thank you, church. You've been very kind. And it took me a few more minutes than 20 minutes. But I hope this was left clear to you. I didn't want to leave it just pending. Tomorrow we're going to move into chapter 13. And now we're going to see that chapter 13 is going to be mainly focusing into periods. 1, Middle Ages. 2, time of the end. It's moving us forward into the future. And that's what's going to keep us busy tomorrow afternoon. We're going to talk about these powers called beast, image of the beast. This number, 666. What do they bear with us? What do they have to do with us? And how can we overcome and be victorious by God's grace? Let me pray. Thank you, O Lord, for being such an awesome God. Thank you for your leading our lives. Thank you for bringing us together tonight to hear about you, what you're doing, and at the same time, helping us, Lord, know what's coming up so we can prepare ourselves and be ready for those events and for the coming of your Son. And I pray, Lord, in a special way for this church, each one of the families here present, individuals. Pray, Lord, that you bless them in a special way. I pray, Lord, that the message communicated was not only clear, but that it was also relevant. That it can help us make the right decisions and to get closer to you. Oh, Lord, bless us tonight. And as we go back to our homes, guide us safely and bring us back again tomorrow, that we may continue enjoying and growing in you. I pray all these blessings in the wonderful name of Jesus.